Alright, today we got another reaction video. This one is going to be reacting to the Nutty Putty Caves documentary by Fascinating Horror on YouTube. Link to the original will be in the description. I apologize for all the background noise. My neighbors are doing some bullshit. It's very fucking loud, so once again, I'm sorry. I'll try to talk louder. But yeah, let's just get right into this shit. Two of my biggest fears, the ocean and tight spaces, like fucking caves, like this shit. So this is going to be uncomfortable for me to watch.
8 p.m. on the 24th of November 2009, John Edward Jones, an avid amateur cave
John Edward Jones, that's his name.
The Nutty
rest in peace to this guy. This has got to be one of the worst ways to die.
In Utah. He was accompanied by a large group of family and friends. It was, after all, just before Thanksgiving. The trip was intended to be a brief adventure that they could share before the holiday. What it turned into was a living nightmare that would cost John Edward Jones his life.
That shit is way too loud.
The Nutty Putty Caves were first discovered in 1960 and were named for the soft brown clay which lined many of the passages. The system consisted of dozens of rooms connected by narrow, low-ceilinged corridors. Although it required a great deal of wriggling and crawling to navigate, it was considered a good cave system for beginners and was visited by thousands each year. Those visitors could enjoy features which included the Big Slide, a room wherein the floor descended at a 45-degree angle. There was also the Maze, a confusing jumble of tiny chambers and tight corridors that were fun to explore and contained a hollow rock that was said to ring like a bell when struck. As supposedly beginner-friendly as the caves were, they weren't without issue. From 1999 to 2004, a number of people, including 2 Boy Scouts, became stuck in tight or narrow parts of the caves and had to be rescued by professionals.
You would have to pay me so much money to do this.
Led to some changes in the way the cave was managed. After being gated for a number of years, the caves were reopened with a registration system in place. Groups would have to book online to ensure that cave management knew who was down there, and the caves wouldn't be overly crowded at any one point in time. That was the situation when John Edward Jones and his friends and family entered the Nutty Putty Caves on the 24th of November 2009. Amongst the group was John's brother, Josh. Between them, the 2 siblings had a great deal of caving experience. During their childhood, they had gone on numerous underground adventures across the state of Utah, although they had never before visited the Nutty Putty Caves. For almost an hour, the trip went well. The group crawled, scrambled, and inched their way through the caverns, delighted by each new discovery. At around 9 p.m, John found what he thought was the entrance to Birth Canal, a well-known stretch of the caves, so named because of how tight
I've actually done this one time, not obviously like
the passageway which confronted John
at a place like this. It was like a family type thing, but
squeezed inside and
I think it was actually a field trip.
When the narrow crevice took a downward turn, he
I didn't really like it too much.
The narrow space looked as though it might open out a little bit further down, and besides, he was sure that
I remember there was this one area in the cave that I went to called the Lemon Squeeze. I think that's what it was called. And I still remember going through that, and it was horrible.
John wasn't in Birth Canal after all. Instead, he was wriggling headfirst down an uncharted tunnel in a different part of the caves, a tunnel that had never been charted specifically because it was far too small. Unaware of the danger, John crawled onwards until he couldn't. When he realised he was stuck, he was head down in an almost vertical passage, the diameter of which was smaller than a front-loading washing machine.
Hell no, bro.
He couldn't move.
He was upside down too. Think about that.
John's brother Josh was close behind him and soon realised something was wrong. When he learned that John was stuck, he first attempted to pull him out, but was able only to shift him a few inches. Realizing that the situation was beyond them, Josh raced back out of the caves to fetch help, while another friend waited by John's side. Within hours, rescue teams were on site. They were faced with an intensely difficult operation. It was now midnight, and pitch black outside the caves as well as in. The place where John was stuck was incredibly narrow, meaning that however many resources were available, only one person could get close enough to access him at any one time. John remained as calm as was possible under the circumstances. Indeed, when the first rescue worker arrived on scene, he thanked them for coming and told them that he really wanted to get out. Making that happen would prove to be next to impossible. Rescue workers attempted to drill out the rock around John, but were able only to widen one small part of the passage by a few inches, even after hours of labour. Abandoning this idea, they rigged up a system of ropes and pulleys.
This gives me anxiety just looking at this. I can't even imagine being in this
the only
position.
Part of him that they could reach. They started the slow and painful process of hauling him out. At first, it seemed like this tactic might succeed. They were able to raise him a significant distance out of the vertical crevice in which he was stuck, although doing so caused John a great deal of pain. While they stopped to rest, a radio was lowered down to John so that he could communicate with his pregnant wife, who waited for him outside the caves.
His wife was pregnant too.
At this stage, John had been stuck in place for 19 hours.
Man, rest in peace to this
almost
guy.
an entire day spent upside down in a space so small that breathing was difficult. Being upside down for that length of time is not a trivial inconvenience. It causes blood to pool in the head, where it can rupture a blood vessel or put so much pressure on the eyes that it causes blindness. The organs lie heavily on top of the lungs, resulting in breathing difficulties and often unconsciousness. For some people, being suspended upside down for as little as 10 minutes can be fatal. John had been stuck that way for almost an entire day. Despite this, he remained quite calm. After several more pulls, he was high enough that he could make
over
eye contact
24
with
hours
rescuers.
Stuck
When asked how he was
upside down
faring, he said only,
in a little tunnel.
"It sucks. I'm upside down. I can't believe I'm upside down.
That's the worst.
My legs are killing me." At this stage, exhausted and in agony as John was, the possibility of escape must have seemed like a very real one. An escape from his confinement, medical attention, contact with his friends and family, all of these things were so close they must have been almost tangible to him. It was at this point that everything went wrong. As the rescuers hauled once more on the rope, something gave way explosively. The rescuer closest to John was hit in the face and briefly knocked unconscious. When he recovered, all he could see was dust and darkness. It took several minutes for him to orient himself and work out the terrible truth. John had slipped right back down into the crevice from which they'd been hauling him. What had happened? A stone arch around which the rope had been looped had shattered, and the next nearest bolt had pulled out of the rock, creating slack in the rope and allowing John to fall. The bolt was what had hit the rescuer in the face and knocked him unconscious. The injured rescuer was evacuated from the cave for treatment, and a replacement wriggled into the narrow defile. They spoke to John, but could get no response, and could hear that his breathing was laboured and shallow. Desperate, they wriggled down into the narrow cave to try and loop another rope around his waist, but became stuck themselves and had to be helped back out. A doctor was escorted down into the caves to assess John as best he could. The news was the worst that there could possibly be. John had passed away. Despite a day-long
worst way to
effort
die.
involving dozens
It's
of
gotta be the worst way to
the
die.
confinement and the inversion had taken its toll. He was declared dead at midnight on November 25th. His friends and family, needless to say, were devastated by the news. John was just 26 at the time, fit and healthy, and with a child on the way. His loss in a cave system considered relatively safe for beginners was a shock to everyone. It was quickly determined that any operation to retrieve his body would be impossibly difficult and dangerous. The landowner, appalled by the incident, initially wished to dynamite the caves, destroying them completely, but was dissuaded from doing so. Instead, the caves were sealed shut with a concrete plug, turning them into a tomb for John Edward Jones. A plaque was installed at the entrance to memorialise the final resting place of an exceptional young man, lost way before his time.
Damn, bro. Rest in peace, John Edward Jones. It's gotta be the worst way to die. Also, what happens if you're down there and, like, the rocks just shift or some shit? You just get crushed, you know? What happens if it rains? Fucking water comes in there and drowns you, you know? You'd have to pay me so much. Honestly, I wouldn't even do this for any amount of money. This is fucking wild. Yeah. I don't even know what to say. Just rest in peace to that guy. It's gotta be the worst way to die. But, if you guys enjoyed this reaction, obviously, link to the original video in the description. Shout out Fascinating Horror for making this video. And, yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one.